For some time now, many car companies and a few software companies have been busy building and testing autonomous vehicles at test tracks and on public roads around the world. Depending on the local and national laws where testing is being carried out, these tests have either relied on the vehicle being supervised by a trained driver sitting behind the wheel, or in the case of a handful of test programs and private test tracks, remotely connected to the vehicle via an always-on internet connection. With a few exceptions, such as the Waymo self-driving robotaxi service in Phoenix, Arizona, and some similar programs in Michigan, fully autonomous driverless cars haven't yet been allowed on the public highways in the US. And while the US federal government is still working through the legislative process needed to allow driverless fully autonomous vehicles to operate on a nationwide basis, the state of California's DMV has just okayed these vehicles on its own roads. And that's a really big thing that will have a massive impact on how driverless cars and level 5 autonomy is developed moving forwards. Not just because California is home to many of the companies and engineering teams working on autonomous vehicles, but because California's roads are some of the most congested in the US. An autonomous driving system developed and tested there should, at least in theory, be able to handle some pretty hairy traffic situations. Of course, California is known for being super cautious when it comes to approving things like fully autonomous driverless cars. So, naturally, there are some precautions that automakers, companies, and engineering teams must undertake before their vehicles will be allowed on the road. First up, the California DMV still requires some pretty hefty insurance payments to be made to ensure that there's significant financial protection against any litigation due to injuries sustained by other road users during the testing of these vehicles. Each and every company seeking to test on the roads of California must complete a certificate of self-insurance with a minimum insurance policy of $5 million of coverage, as well as submit audited financial statements that reflect a net worth of not less than $5 million for the 3-year period immediately before the application date. If the company is worth less than $5 million, it won't be allowed by the California DMV to test on the public highway. The second important stipulation is that in order to be considered for the program, which offers a 2-year rolling renewable license, companies will have to demonstrate that they have a suitable system in place to ensure that all driverless autonomous vehicles are remotely monitored by what the DMV is calling a remote operator. These are employees or contractors for the company in question who are remotely connected to the vehicle at all times while it's operating on the public highway. They must be able to not only communicate with the passengers inside the vehicle, but also be able to take over any dynamic driving task needed of them, or get the vehicle to something called a minimal risk condition. In plain English, this means making sure that the car and passengers are safe at all times. Interestingly, this sounds very much like Nissan's proposed Seamless Autonomy Mobility System, or SAM for short. First showcased last year, SAM works by connecting Nissan autonomous vehicles with a centralized operations hub where trained staff help autonomous vehicles overcome situations that they might not be able to handle on their own. This could be anything from an unexpected obstruction in the road that requires temporarily breaking a traffic law to circumvent, to dealing with extreme conditions or post-accident scenarios where the road may not be completely clear. In Nissan's model, operators either control the vehicle themselves temporarily or plot a path that the vehicle can then follow to get itself out of harm's way. But the California DMV requirement for remote operators is, for now at least, a little stricter, with one remote operator monitoring one car at any time. Eventually, it looks as if the state of California will allow that rule to relax a little, allowing remote operators the ability to monitor multiple vehicles at once. But it's clear for now that the California DMV does not feel full level 5 autonomy is completely ready for prime time. And I'd have to agree. A final little snippet worth noting here is that the regulation as it stands specifically prohibits companies from allowing anyone other than fully trained, licensed employees or contractors of the company in question to operate the vehicle. And in this case, it means either behind the wheel or remotely operating it. It also prohibits companies from charging a fee for passengers for riding in the autonomous vehicles, meaning Lyft, Uber, or anyone else wanting to bring autonomous vehicle taxi services to market won't be able to do so yet. Finally, this legislation doesn't cover privately owned vehicles with autonomous vehicle capabilities. In other words, if you've got a Tesla with an autopilot system or any other car with similar capabilities, you're still going to have to sit behind the wheel with your seatbelt on and your eyes on the road, ready to take over if required. Then again, since Tesla isn't currently enrolled in California's autonomous vehicle program, it's a moot point anyway, I guess. Do you think these new regulations will help or hinder autonomous vehicle development? And which companies do you think will make the most use of them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time.